Both ministers Mas and Ashkenazi also addressed the regional challenges vis-à-vis the Islamic Republic of Iran, while the Israeli top diplomat underscored the numerous dangers that are incisively pursued by the Ayatollah regime in Tehran, which openly declares its aspiration to annihilate the Jewish state. The German top diplomat reiterated Berlin's determined perception, which views the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran as the only mechanism that at this stage can thwart the Islamic Republic's aspiration to acquire nuclear weapons, despite the fact that Tehran had clearly and openly abandoned its so-called nuclear-related obligations more than 6 months ago.
Wir alle wollen einen atomwaffenfreien Iran. Das ist unser übergeordnetes Ziel und wir sind nach wie vor der Auffassung, dass mit der Nuklearvereinbarung wir einen Weg haben, mit dem wir dieses Ziel erreichen können. Wenn es diese Vereinbarung nicht gäbe, würde der Iran heute möglicherweise schon über Atomwaffen verfügen. Und deshalb glauben wir daran, dass es Sinn macht, den Iran auch weiter aufzufordern, in diesem Abkommen zu verbleiben, aber sich vor allen Dingen an die Verpflichtungen zu halten.
Turning now to Washington, D.C., where the Middle East Institute held a special video conference with General Kenneth McKenzie, Jr., who is the commander of the United States Central Command, which is in charge of the U.S. military's area of operations in Central Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa. During the broadcast Q&A session, General McKenzie highlighted that the U.S. military identifies the Islamic Republic of Iran as the greatest threat to the stability and security across CENTCOM area of operations, which stretches far beyond the Middle East.
The greatest threat to stability and security in the region is Iran. Their funding of terrorism and terrorist organizations, they're propping up the murderous Assad regime, providing advanced weapons to the Houthis in Yemen, their direct attack on international oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, refineries in Saudi Arabia, and U.S. troops in Iraq. Iran actively stokes instability and is intent on degrading security all over the region, ultimately for their own hegemonic purposes. Over time, the regime in Iran has taken a great portion of the country's wealth and prosperity and repeatedly invested it in instruments of instability and proxies, and they use violence, both state violence and proxy violence, to push other nations, other regimes in the area in the direction of their agenda.
General McKenzie further noted that while the U.S. Central Command's goal is to deter Iran from taking action, it is not directly involved in the Trump administration's so-called maximum pressure campaign. Alongside the threat of the Islamic Republic, General McKenzie also highlighted efforts to contain the Sunni Muslim terror organizations across the region, including the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, who retain the aspiration to attack both the United States and its allies around the world. The U.S. CENTCOM commander also made mention of an evident resurgence of global powers that are actively trying to compete with the United States across the greater Middle East region.
Last, we're beginning to see a resurgence, if you will, of great power competition in the Central Command AOR as China and Russia begin to find weaknesses and begin to move into it. In Central Command, the Central Asian states and the Central Gulf region, in fact, all of Central Command is becoming a newly active area of engagement between us and other great powers as we compete on the global stage.
General McKenzie further referred to the region as the Wild West for competing global powers. He highlighted that while Beijing has entered the Mideast principally only economically, its strategic interest will ultimately draw China into the region in other capacities, including militarily.
China gets over 50% of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Additionally, there are vast mineral and other deposits in the theater that China would certainly like to have access to. And they would prefer to do it under somebody else's security auspices, but who knows what they'll think, what their design will be in the long term. But I think this is a significant factor that we need to confront. So as I think of China, and actually I do worry about China quite a bit because it is one of my core taskings. So, we think about how we assure our partners in the region that we're going to be around, that we're going to be dependable partners.
In contrast to China, General McKenzie does not seem to be impressed by Russia's resurgence in the region.
Russia doesn't have the economic resources to come into the region in the way that China is. We do see them, where they are, though, it's pretty high intensity. We see them in Syria, as you noted.